Hello YouTube family, thank you for joining me, Chris, and my Wicked Repairs channel here. Today I have a motorcycle we're going to do some service on, basically do oil and filter change, replacing a clutch cable, spark plugs, and doing a whole kind of pre-season tune-up. I'm going to adjust the belt on it, loop some cables, pivot points, stuff like that, charge the battery. So you can see I'm in my carport here that I just posted a video on, and whether you saw it or not, this is the carport that I built, and basically I have 3 bikes in here right now that I have to be worked on, and it's a nice hot day. It's a but actually not too bad under this tarp, but I'm gonna flip you around here real quick. So we have here is a 2007 Victory Hammer. As I said, we're going to do a full service to this. So you can see I have parts over there. I have oil change kit, clutch cable, spark plugs, and we're going to go through this bike. We're going to start by doing the oil, changing the oil. So I have my drain pan here, and see if we can see this here real quick. So that right there is your drain bolt. So it's a 6mm Allen head, and there's a copper washer on that drain bolt. Make sure that comes off the case, and you should replace it. It is reusable, but I do have another one to replace it, so we're going to replace it. And right in the back side of the motor is the oil filter. Can't be much easier to just spin this thing off. If you need you should be able to grab it by hand, because it shouldn't be too tight, but if it is tight, then use a oil filter cup or a strap wrench or whatever, you can see it's already moving there. So I'm gonna start by draining the oil. And one thing you're gonna want to do, the dipstick is on this side of the motorcycle. You're gonna want to loosen up this dipstick here. That way, if there's any crankcase pressure, the oil just flows out nice and smooth with the dipstick loose, so that air can force it through. So I'm gonna start doing that now. Alright, so we got everything drained rather. It's just dripping a little bit. So one thing you always want to make sure to coat this O-ring on the new oil filter, and always make sure that the old O-ring has been removed and is not in the crankcase. And you put it on, basically spin it on, and what I do is grab it as tight as I can. That should be good enough hand tight. If you have to, you could take a the oil filter cup wrench and just tweak it a little bit, or if you want to, a little peace of mind, definitely do not go too tight with it. You want to be able to get this off next time. That makes a nice good seal. But if you take a cup wrench or a strap wrench or whatever, and just slightly tweak it, that's all you need to do there. The oil filter is done. Get the drain bolt, as I mentioned, to replace that washer. Always put the new washer on. There is kind of a flat side and a rounded side. You want the flat side towards the crankcase, so you want the flat side towards the motor. This did come out a little bit rough. Almost seems like somebody over torqued it a little too much when they installed it last time. Same thing with the drain bolt. I mean, it's only probably about 12 to 15 foot-pounds, so it doesn't take a whole lot of strength really to get it in there. This motor was also a little overfilled with oil here. These only take about 4.5 quarts or so, and I definitely got about 5.5 to 6 out. So you can see that this thing doesn't even want to go in. I should be able to get most of this in by hand with this. These threads are a little messed up. It's not good. So and then 2 is just real easy. I mean, it's turning fine with the ratchet. So I mean, it feels okay, but they don't feel very smooth like they should. Definitely feel like somebody over torqued this last time it was done. And that's basically it. That's all you need. Snug it up, and a little tweaking just to get it a little more tighter, and that's it. Doesn't take a lot of pressure. You don't have to crank on this thing. It's not an axle. It's not like a wheel's gonna fall off. That gasket will seal. So don't ever put your drain bolt too tight. You strip out your crankcase threads, and then you're in big trouble. So now we're going to come over to where the dipstick is. I gotta go grab my funnel and stuff, but I'm gonna take the dipstick out completely, and we're gonna fill in the proper amount of oil. Basically, what I like to do, what we're gonna do here, you can see the dipstick has this hash mark and this hash mark. The oil needs to be right in between there. Should have the bike standing straight up. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get the oil level in between here, and then we're gonna start the motor, let it run for about 30 seconds or so, shut it down, let it cool down, and then we're going to double check the oil and add properly to what it needs. Basically where you want it is smack dab in the middle of those two hash marks. If you have it on the high side, when the oil gets warm, it will expand and it will probably go up too much. If you have it on the excuse me, if you have it on the low side, it's going to expand and come up, but you want it smack dab in the middle there. So what we're going to do, like as I said, we're going to fill it up, get to the proper level, start it up, let it run for a little bit, shut it down, let everything settle and cool down, and then we're going to double check it, and then we'll add oil if we need, and then we're going to double check it again or triple check it after we give it a nice good ride when it's hot. So I'm going to do that now. See you soon. Alright, so you can see I have a couple of pieces of wood here. The bike is just about perfectly straight up. Just enough on the side stand that it's not going to flop over. You can't sit on the bike and reach down and check the dipstick also. But this is how I typically do it when I'm working on flat ground like this. Is just wedge it up with a couple pieces of wood. It's just about straight up, which is good enough to, like I said, that it's on the stand. It's not going to fall over. When you check the oil on this, what you want to do, what I like to do, stuff a little rag right here so that the oil doesn't drip all over the pipes and stuff. And when you check the oil level on this, and all I did was add the oil so far, I haven't started it, you're going to want to thread the dipstick in all the way and then bring it back out and check it. And we are basically halfway up. Perfect. So it is more than likely going to go down a little bit because of filling up the oil filter and all the oil lines and everything. And I have put in 4 1/4 quarts so far. So it's probably going to take that whole rest of the half to get it up to normal. So I'm just going to add just a little bit of oil right now just to bring it to basically the top level of those hash marks on the dipstick. And then I'm going to start it up, and then we'll let it cool down to double check it. Alright, so we did the oil. I have it, started it up, shut it down. I'm letting it cool down now. And I pulled off this side cover here where the battery is. And what I'm going to do now, and that cover, just so you know, literally just pulls off. It's got 3 little tabs that go into the grommets, and it just pulls out. I'm going to charge the battery on this and test the battery, and I'm going to remove the seat. So I'm going to pull off this side cover, pull off the other side cover, and then I'm going to take off these side arms here, because you have to take these off to access the battery terminal, because it's way back here. I don't know how to get it on camera. I can see it. Alright, there it is. There's the positive battery terminal. So we're going to have to take off this to be able to get to there to put the battery cables on, the charger cables on. So I'm going to pull off the other side cover, get those side arms off, start charging the battery. We're going to remove the seat and start to get everything ready to replace the clutch cable, because the clutch cable runs out of the fuel tank, so we're going to have to move that as well. Alright, so we took both side covers off, took this side arm off, and the next thing we're going to do is remove the seat. So to remove the seat, there's two 13mm bolts, one here and one on the other side. We're going to take those off and take the seat off. I could see when I went to go take the seat off, these wires are broken in here, which is pretty common with this. I've seen it many times where the wires aren't secure, bottoms out a little bit, tire comes up, hits those wires, rips them. So that's exactly what happened here. This bike currently only has a rear left directional working, no tail light, brake light, no right directional. So we're gonna have some wiring to fix here also, but for now we're just gonna take the seat off. Just to clarify, there's actually 4 bolts for the seats. So there's the 2 rear bolts and then 2 front bolts here. So there's shorter ones in the rear, longer ones in the front, and then the seat comes off, and then you access everything else inside here. So now that we have the battery exposed, I'm going to hook up the battery charger and just start charging this a little bit so I can charge it fully and test it and make sure that the battery is nice and healthy. Alright, so to replace the clutch cable, you're going to have to, and I already loosened this up, but you have to take the free play out of the clutch cable here. So basically where this center nut is, you're going to loosen up on that lock nut and then adjust on this all the way up to collapse the nut and to get all the free play out. There's clamps. You're going to have to take off this nut here that holds on this clamp for the cable. Also have this one in particular had this little chrome piece that was up here. It's a 330, has 2 3/32 size Allen heads in it. There's just a little cover that goes over the cable end. So take that off. You have a nut that's right here, 13mm down here. Have to take that nut off, and this has an easy pull on it. We're gonna have to take the easy pull off here also and get the clutch cable apart. So I'm gonna do that now and start replacing the clutch cable. So I got the clutch cable on. I was hoping I wasn't gonna have to do this, but I did have to do it, which wasn't a big deal. But to get this nut off on the old cable, I used a 1/2-inch stubby wrench to get the nut off. However, when I put the cable on and went to tighten it, I couldn't get it tight enough. It just wasn't even coming close. So I did have to remove the battery. So I took off the battery cables, took off the 2 nuts that hold that battery cover on that go here and here, and then I took off the 3 10mm bolts, one here, and one here for the battery tray. And I was able to get that out enough without having to remove the starter solenoid or the connector for the ECM. So basically I just took the bolts off, pulled it over slightly enough to be able to get back there to get to the cable nut and the other side to be able to tighten it. So got it tight now, so I'm putting the tray back on and the cover, and then I'll finish putting the rest of the cable on, the cable ends, and tightening up the clamp on the other side, and the cable will be all set. Alright, so we got the clutch cable all set, ready to go 100%. We've got the battery tray back in. The battery, which I've had it on charge for a couple hours now, while it was sitting. I was doing a few other things around the house, but got the battery cover on, the seat back on, and we're going to replace the spark plugs now. I've already pulled the wires out. There is typically almost always some debris down in here, so it's always very important to take your air hose from the compressor, get some compressed air, blow any debris out of both of these areas where the spark plugs are. That way when you remove the spark plugs, no dirt gets inside the cylinder, because that will score up your pistons and cylinders, and could wreak havoc if something substantial falls in there. Big, could be a rock that's in there, a small rock or something that falls in there, or like I said, even just little bits of sand that fall in there. Engines don't like sand, so it's going to score up the cylinders and be bad news. So always make sure you blow that out, then remove the spark plug. Then we're going to install new spark plugs, and what I always do personally is I put just a little dab of dielectric grease on the tip of the ignition coil, so when you put it back on, you just get some it keeps corrosion down and stuff, and makes a good electrical contact. Dielectric grease, that's what it's for. So we're going to do that right now and swap out the spark plugs. So another thing we're going to do here with this hammer is fix all this wiring back here. You can see we got some broken wires. That's basically from not being secured properly up here and the tire hitting the wires and ripping them apart. I've seen it happen many times. Right now it only has a left rear directional, no right directional, and no brake light or tail light. So I'm going to rewire this stuff together and re-secure it and take this thing for a test ride. So I wanted to touch base on this Victory. So we did the service, replaced the clutch cable, and then I came across the issue with the directionals not working. So it was only the right side directionals that weren't working. The left side was working fine. I did copious amounts of electrical testing on this thing to find out what was going on with it, and it ended up being the auto cancel module that's connected to the flashers, flasher relay. Basically goes from the switch into the ECU and into the auto cancel module, out to the directionals. They share multiple grounds with each other and with other sensors as well. And basically, because it's an older bike and because Victory does not make motorcycles or parts anymore, that flasher or the auto cancel module is no longer available. I can't find it anywhere in the United States. I've been looking all over the place for it. I called many different states all around. There were a few places that said they had them in stock, and when I called and checked, they did not. So if you ever come across this and you have this same type of issue and you need an auto cancel module, there is basically no way to wire in anything separate to use the existing cluster for the flasher. And basically what happens is, because this one had failed that the right side directionals weren't working, that auto cancel module that failed, basically it failed internally in the way that it thinks to always shut off the flashers. So that's why we can never get it working. So I had spent a lot of time on this bike checking all the electrical stuff, and that's what it came down to. So I'm gonna turn the camera around here and show you what I did basically. Alright, so what we did here, because you cannot use this switch anymore, the way the system works and the way that this ties into the ECU in that auto cancel module to be able to turn the directional on, send the signal, and auto cancel and all that. This has directionals in the back that are aftermarket LED directionals, and so I got a LED flasher relay, and I had wired in a separate toggle switch. You'll see the switch right here, and basically what I did was I made a mount for it. So when you turn on the directionals, you got flashing here on the right, and we got flashing on the left. You might not be able to see it because it's very bright out, but yeah, you can see it a little bit. So obviously they're not going to auto cancel since the module is no good anyhow, otherwise I would have been able to use this. So we have the directionals working through this toggle switch, which is very easily manageable when you're driving. It's right below the horn. So if you ever come into that issue where you need an auto cancel module for one of these and you cannot get it anymore, it's no longer available, this is the only way you will be able to wire in directionals to work for this type of machine, basically. So it was a nightmare basically to diagnose it, checking all kinds of wires, this and that, checking continuity, finding out which wire is this, which wire is that. I had a wiring diagram, of course, and there was no way that I could possibly wire this into this existing switch and make it work, because of the way the electrical system works. Even the right front directionals on these machines are wired backwards. All the other directionals, you have a power and a ground. That's that one has a power and a ground as well, but it's wired in reverse. I'm not sure 100% what the purpose of that is, but it is. And you can actually mess up a auto cancel module by switching that the wrong way. You know, if you put power to the ground and ground to the power, that seems like that's where it goes. It doesn't. Those are wired backwards. And so, as I said, the only way to do it was to get a toggle switch, a LED flasher relay, which if you don't have LEDs, you could use the regular flasher relay, but I did an LED flasher relay so that the directionals would flash at a normal rate. Otherwise, they flash really fast because LEDs use a lot less wattage or voltage than an incandescent bulb, and they can't control it, and they flash really fast. So I had done both, both left and right to that toggle switch. So that's going to be the control for it now. And hopefully this helps somebody that has any issues with directionals and auto cancel module on these bikes. So hopefully you learned something from this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much for watching my videos. Hopefully you subscribe. And we'll see you on the next one.